The camera hovers over the fog-drenched Potomac River, the moon's pale reflection fractured by restless currents. The city is silent, but I can hear it. The faint, almost imperceptible clatter of chains beneath the foundation of the building that was supposed to symbolize freedom. I've walked these halls countless times, yet never like tonight, when the shadows themselves seem to watch, waiting for my curiosity to cross the line. I first heard the story in a voice too hushed, almost afraid to speak. A whispered warning from an archivist whose eyes had grown hollow from decades of staring at yellowed ledgers and letters nobody else dared examine. They were never meant to be remembered, she said. But they are still here. The White House, with its whitewashed columns gleaming under the floodlights, feels like a monument built over silence. Beneath the polished floors and ornate furniture, the echoes of men, women, and children forced into unacknowledged labor still haunt the timber and brick. I can almost see their faces when I close my eyes. Their eyes hollow, their hands scarred, their voices swallowed by history. As I step closer to the east wing, a subtle tremor shakes the marble. A fleeting draft carries the smell of damp earth and smoke. Odd, because nothing burns here. The portraits of past presidents stare back at me, but I begin to notice something unsettling. The shadows cast by the frames seem too long, stretching unnaturally, twisting toward the floor like fingers seeking something lost. The room exhales a memory I cannot place, and I feel the walls themselves watching, remembering. The documents I unearthed speak of men and women whose labor was forced under the guise of progress, forgotten names buried in crypts and ledgers, erased from public memory. But I can hear them faintly beneath the timber, beneath the stone, beneath the very foundation. And tonight, for the first time, I feel that their silence is breaking. The chains are beginning to rattle. The library of the White House, silent and grand, seems smaller under the weight of history tonight. The air is thick, almost suffocating, as though the building itself has grown protective of its secrets. I run my fingers over the spines of leather-bound volumes, each polished to perfection, each one whispering carefully curated history. But one book, misplaced and trembling on a lower shelf, feels different. Its cover is unremarkable, but the edges are brittle, stained with age and something I cannot name. I pull it free, and a cloud of dust rises, motes dancing in the single beam of my flashlight. The pages are handwritten, ink faded to sepia tones, but the words claw at me immediately. Lists of names, men and women, children even labeled as property, yet each line carries an annotation, a tremor of despair, a notation of injury, of death, of disappearance. I can feel the horror in the handwriting itself, the way the pen hesitates over certain letters, as if the writer feared what they were recording. A sudden draft flickers the candle beside me, throwing shadows across the ceiling. The room seems to warp. The portrait's eyes follow me now, not with passive observation but accusation. A whispered murmur rises from the walls, soft, broken voices, syllables lost to time, calling for remembrance. My skin pricks. I know I am not alone. The ledger details work that was never acknowledged, tunnels dug beneath the foundations, stone quarried from hidden pits, timber hewn in secret. And more than that, it hints at rituals, a cycle of terror and control, practiced by those who built this house while the world applauded their vision of liberty. I read of men who vanished without record, of children whose laughter was swallowed by darkness, of women chained and silent. A sound cuts through my reverie, a faint scrape, like fingernails against wood. My flashlight trembles. The ledger slips from my hands, falling open to a page I could never have imagined. Names overlap with dates, and then a single, stark line. The foundation remembers them all. The words pulse with something alive. I feel it beneath the floorboards, the building itself breathing, shifting, watching. The forgotten, the erased are not gone, and tonight they are beginning to speak. The candlelight trembles across the polished floors, casting distorted shadows that stretch like reaching fingers. I kneel, tracing the seams where the oak panels meet, and feel it. A subtle depression in the wood, a hollow that hums under my touch. My pulse quickens. The ledger's words echo in my mind. The foundation remembers them all. With trembling hands I lift the floorboard. Dust and the faint tang of iron rise from the darkness below. The space beneath the White House is narrow, suffocating, lined with stone and the remnants of timber that creak as if holding back centuries of sorrow. My flashlight cuts through the gloom, illuminating the walls. Scratches, carved names, dates, faint etchings of hands pressed against stone in silent desperation. Each mark a whisper from the past, pleading not to be forgotten. I descend cautiously, feeling the chill seep into my bones. The air is thick with something ancient, oppressive, a blend of damp earth and the faint acrid scent of decay. Every step echoes unnaturally, bouncing off walls that seem closer than they should be. I can hear it now, a dragging sound, subtle, deliberate, like chains being shifted. I freeze. The sound doesn't belong to the present. It belongs to a memory, a resonance that refuses to fade. There are remnants of their labor here, broken tools, rusted shackles, fragments of clothing. But more disturbing are the signs of something else. Symbols etched into stone, spirals and sigils I cannot identify, worn smooth from countless hands. The ledger had hinted at ritual, but this is a living memory, a shadowed testimony that the foundation itself has absorbed. A sudden shiver crawls down my spine as I realize the walls are humming. Not a sound, but a vibration, a subtle pulse beneath my feet, like the heartbeat of the forgotten. And then I feel it. Fingers brushing against my ankle, fleeting, almost unreal, but enough to make my breath catch. The air thickens. Whispers curl around me, soft and incoherent, yet insistent. Remember us. Remember us. I retreat a step, my flashlight catching a figure in the shadows. A fleeting silhouette that disappears before my eyes can register its form. But the dread remains, heavy and alive. The foundation of the White House is not stone and timber alone. It is memory, grief, chains, and something older, something that will not forgive the forgetting. The air beneath the White House floors grows heavier with each step. My flashlight flickers as if resisting the darkness, illuminating the walls of the subterranean chamber, and then I see them. Faces pressed into stone and mortar, eyes hollow, mouths open in silent screams that defy time. They are not carvings, not fully. They shimmer, almost translucent, as if memory itself has been trapped in the very foundation. I stagger back, heart hammering. Each face is different, young, old, men, women, children. Their eyes follow me, accusing and desperate. I can feel their fear, their suffering, their anger, a weight pressing into my chest. This is no ordinary haunting. This is the imprint of lives stolen, of labor extracted under threat and violence, their spirits fused to the building itself. I remember the ledger's names, some familiar from history books, others erased entirely from public memory. There is Samuel, a carpenter forced to work on the walls of the West Wing, who vanished one winter without record. There is Eliza, a child whose laughter once filled a Maryland plantation, now trapped in this stone prison. Their stories, once erased, now press against me, demanding recognition. A sudden cold sweeps the chamber, carrying with it whispers in fractured English, phrases I can almost understand. Do not forget. Our chains, our children. My flashlight wavers, and in the shadowed corner, I glimpse movement, a hand pale and spectral, tracing the grooves of the stone as if searching for something lost. I realize that these spirits are not violent in the conventional sense. They do not want to harm. They want acknowledgement. They are anger and sorrow, memory made flesh, bound to a history that the living refuse to see. The foundation trembles beneath me, not from structure, but from presence. I stumble backward, breath ragged, and the faces seem to recede, melting into the stone, yet the whispers linger, curling around my mind. They were never meant to be remembered, but tonight, someone is listening. My flashlight trembles over the rough stone walls, revealing faint scorch marks and symbols etched in patterns I cannot name. The ledger had hinted at these markings, coded notes, instructions for work, for control. But seeing them here, in the cold silence beneath the White House, is worse than anything I imagined. They speak of a methodical terror, of labor and suffering entwined with belief, with the notion that the building itself must be consecrated in pain. I trace a pattern with my fingers, the stone cold yet vibrating under my touch. Names appear alongside the symbols. Men and women enslaved, their families recorded in meticulous, horrifying detail. And alongside the ledger's dry facts, hints of ritual. Certain laborers forced to work at night, their sweat and blood marking the foundation. Others confined beneath newly laid beams until their strength failed. Children tasked with carrying stones while chanting prayers imposed by overseers. I think of George Washington, Thomas Jefferson, and other early leaders, men celebrated as architects of freedom. But beneath their polished facades, these rituals ensured obedience, erased humanity, and imbued the building with a lingering, unnatural presence. History records their names in triumphs. The ledger records names forgotten, sacrificed, made spectral by oppression. A draft moves through the chamber, carrying a scent of ash and iron. Whispers rise around me, fragmented and urgent. We built your world. We remain. You cannot leave. My mind reels, struggling to separate memory from hallucination, reality from echo. And yet the stone beneath me vibrates as though confirming every word. I notice something more. A small pit, concealed by stones and dirt, lined with the charred remains of tools and clothing. The ledger had mentioned cleansing sites where laborers were ritually punished, their suffering intended to sanctify the very walls above. I feel nausea, but also a morbid fascination. The foundation of the White House is not merely stone and mortar. It is ritual, sacrifice, and memory bound to horror. The chamber grows darker, though my flashlight fights against the oppressive shadows. The air feels thick, almost viscous, pressing against my lungs. And then the whispers begin. Soft at first, like wind brushing over dry leaves, but unmistakably human. Names, dates, snatches of conversation carried from centuries past. Samuel, child. Odin 3. Mother weeps. I stumble backward, heart hammering. The voices swirl, overlapping, layering, a cacophony of sorrow that resonates in my chest. The ledger had listed these individuals, but the whispers are more than ink on paper. They are memory itself, made palpable. One voice rises above the others, urgent, demanding, "Why, remember us. Tell them we existed." I strain to focus, and the shadows begin to shift, coalescing into vague forms. A figure stands at the far wall, half seen, flickering like a candle flame caught in wind. Its eyes are hollow, yet piercing, filled with the weight of unrecorded life. I feel its gaze not merely observing me, but measuring, testing my capacity to bear witness. The temperature drops. My breath fogs in the air as a trembling begins in the stone beneath my feet, rhythmic like a heartbeat. The whispers intensify, now synchronized with the pulse. Chains. Chains, chains. My flashlight quivers, catching glimpses of hands reaching, pressing, retreating into the stone. The foundation itself is alive with memory. I recall the historical texts, the builders' accounts, the letters of early presidents, the records of congressional oversight, and I realize the unthinkable. The White House, symbol of liberty, stands atop layers of hidden labor, concealed terror, and ritualized oppression. These people, these forgotten souls, are bound to it as surely as any legal contract, though invisible to history. A sudden scream pierces the chamber, distant yet close, echoing off stone, carrying agony and accusation. I stumble back, almost falling, and the flashlight reveals the wall again. A face impossibly close now, lips moving in silence, eyes burning with unspent rage. It is a warning, a plea, a curse. We built your world. Never forget. I step back from the trembling stone floor, my mind reeling from the faces, the whispers, the pulse beneath my feet. The White House is supposed to be a temple of democracy, yet I feel it for what it truly is. A monument built on the suffering that no historian dares fully recount. As I examine the ledger again, I notice letters exchanged between presidents and their architects. Polished prose, official and proud. But beneath the formal language lies a coded acknowledgement. References to night labor and foundation consecrations appear in passing, treated as mundane logistical matters. The builders' secret was not only in what they did, but in their deliberate erasure of the people who did it. The enslaved, the disappeared, are footnotes in a narrative constructed to celebrate liberty while hiding its human cost. I trace a faint smear on the wall, dark and sticky with age. My mind recalls the whispers, "Chains, chains, chains." It is not a plea for vengeance but for recognition. These voices are the shadow history that the polished columns, the gala rooms, the portraits cannot erase. A shiver crawls down my spine as I imagine the meetings, presidents pacing floors above, while laborers toiled beneath. Their hands raw, their spirits pressed into stone. The building absorbs their suffering, and in return, it offers the powerful a symbol of untouchable authority, seemingly benign, yet layered with dread and secrecy. The supernatural now manifests in small but undeniable ways. A sudden draft moves the ledger's pages on its own. Shadows twist unnaturally in the corner, faint scratching echoes from walls where none should exist. These are not tricks of the imagination. They are memory made physical, reminders that history cannot be contained in ink and marble alone. I kneel, trembling, touching the stone where a faint impression of a hand remains. The pulse beneath my fingers grows stronger, rhythmic, alive. I whisper the names I can remember from the ledger, and for a fleeting moment the whispers respond, a soft chorus of acknowledgement, like a sigh from centuries past. Finally, someone remembers. A section of the floorboards creaks differently than the rest, a subtle resonance that draws me closer. The candlelight flickers, elongating my shadow against the polished walls of the East Wing. Beneath the grand veneer of diplomacy and ceremony, I sense a hollow, a secret deliberately hidden. With trembling hands I lift the boards. Dust swirls, thick and acrid, carrying with it the faint metallic tang of blood and iron. Below lies a narrow stone staircase descending into blackness. My flashlight quivers as I step down. The air is dense, laden with centuries of suppressed fear and sorrow. Every step echoes unnaturally, magnifying the silence. At the bottom, the chamber opens into a low-ceilinged room, walls carved with symbols that pulse in the flashlight's beam. Rusted chains hang from iron hooks, and fragments of clothing, brittle with age, litter the floor. The ledger had hinted at such chambers, places where laborers were punished, confined, and forced to consecrate the foundation with their suffering. I can feel the weight of all those lost beneath the East Wing, and the air hums with their presence. Whispers rise from the shadows, fragmented but insistent. Do not leave. Remember. I turn in every direction, seeing figures flit across the stone just beyond clarity, lingering at the edges of vision. Hands press against walls that are far too solid, leaving impressions that vanish as soon as I focus. I notice a central pit, shallow but ominous, lined with soot and ash. Here the ritual intersects with labor, sacrifices of energy, endurance, and life, performed under the guise of construction. Names from the ledger echo in my mind, children, women, men, each forced into obedience, each etched into memory. The pulse beneath the floor grows stronger, as if the foundation itself is alive with remembrance. I place my hand over the pit, and an electric shiver runs up my arm. A chorus of voices rises, louder, more urgent, layered with anguish and accusation. You see us, finally. Tell them. My heart pounds, yet the chamber does not feel empty. It feels sentient, a repository of sorrow, rage, and the unnatural imprint of centuries-long suffering. The candlelight trembles as I stand over the pit in the East Wing chamber. The whispers coalesce, forming a single urgent presence. Then I see him. A figure, tall and gaunt, with eyes hollowed by centuries of labor and fear. He steps forward, but his feet barely touch the floor, hovering slightly above it. I realize with a shiver, this is Samuel the carpenter listed in the ledger, a man whose life was erased by the very walls he helped build. His gaze pierces mine, and I feel the weight of every brick he placed, every timber he carried. His hands are ghostly pale, scarred, shaking from labor long past yet somehow present. "Do you know what it cost?" he whispers. His voice is soft, yet it reverberates through the stone, rattling the chains still clinging to the chamber walls. I nod, unsure, words failing me. He steps closer, the air around him cold enough to sting my skin. "George, Thomas, they praised freedom while they built this over us. Do you hear them? Do you see what they erased?" I feel the pulse beneath my feet intensify, matching his words, as if the building itself responds to his voice. I ask him what he wants, my voice barely above a whisper. Samuel's eyes flare with anguish and resolve. "Remember, tell them our names. Do not let them hide us again." He gestures to the walls, to the etched symbols, to the charred pit beneath the floorboards. "Every corner of this chamber, every scratch in the stone, is a testament to lives treated as invisible, to suffering institutionalized and sanctified in secrecy." The whispers around me swell into a chorus, overlapping, calling out names I cannot yet pronounce. Samuel's face becomes a mask of sorrow and warning, the light flickering across it like a broken memory. He leans closer, and for an instant, I feel the chains that bound him wrap around my wrists, cold and unyielding, imprinting the terror of centuries into my very bones. Then, as suddenly as he appeared, he recedes into the shadows, leaving only the echo of his plea, the pulse beneath the floor, and the undeniable understanding. The foundation of American power rests not on liberty alone, but on lives forcibly silenced, bound into stone, and remembered only by those brave or foolish enough to witness. I step back into the polished halls above the East Wing chamber, the contrast jarring. The grand chandeliers, the marble floors, the air of ceremonial civility. It all feels fragile, a veneer masking what lies beneath. Yet the pulse from below lingers, faint but insistent, like a heartbeat I cannot ignore. Visitors walk these corridors unaware. Tourists pose for photographs, cameras clicking, oblivious to the history that trembles under their feet. I watch them, but the moment is distorted. Shadows stretch unnaturally across the walls, whispering the same names I saw etched into stone. "Samuel, Eliza." "Remember, the voices do not belong to this century, yet they press into the present, insistent, demanding acknowledgement." I see a security guard pause mid-step, staring at a corridor where nothing should exist. His eyes widen, pupils dilated, and he shakes his head as if trying to dismiss a vision. He never speaks of what he saw, and yet I know. The White House has always held memory like this, hidden just beyond perception. Those who enter are touched by it, whether they understand or not. I walk toward the East Room, imagining the weight of those who labored beneath. The chandeliers above gleam, but I feel the shadows below clawing upward, reaching, whispering. A faint breeze brushes my neck, carrying the smell of iron and earth. For a moment I see hands pressed against the marble walls, translucent, desperate, imprinting centuries of toil and anguish onto the present. Historical pride clashes violently with spectral reality. Here, in the seat of democracy, freedom was declared while lives were buried, ignored, sanctified through suffering. The foundation remembers, it pulses. It calls out to anyone attuned enough to listen. I realize that the ghosts are patient. They do not need immediate acknowledgement. They only need witnesses willing to see, to understand the depth of their erasure, the centuries of deliberate forgetting. And in that silence I hear them clearly, a chorus of anguish, of hope, of accusation. You cannot leave this world without remembering us. The archives are silent, cavernous, every step echoing against stone walls lined with centuries of paper. My flashlight traces dusty shelves until it lands on a leather-bound journal, hidden behind volumes of speeches and treaties. The cover is unmarked, but the weight of secrecy presses against it like a living thing. I open it slowly. The handwriting is deliberate, polished, impossibly meticulous, but beneath the rhetoric lies a record that chills me to the bone. The author is unmistakable. A president, one of the revered founders of the nation, writing of labor, construction, and, most disturbingly, ritual. References to ceremonies, nightly overseers, and sacrifices intended to consecrate the foundation leap from the pages. Each entry is a careful blend of mundane logistics and coded acknowledgement of suffering. I read the words aloud, softly, and the shadows around me shift. The air grows colder. My breath fogs in front of my face as if I am descending into the past itself. The journal describes the work of Samuel, Eliza, and countless others, detailing not only their labor but the psychic toll it exacted, the fear imposed to maintain order, and the deliberate erasure from public memory. A chill runs down my spine. The journal is not merely historical. It resonates, vibrating with the same pulse I felt beneath the East Wing floors. I can almost hear the whispers of the laborers urging recognition. See us. Remember us. Our blood consecrates your halls. Symbols are sketched in the margins, resembling the carvings in the hidden chamber. They are protective, binding, ritualistic, and I realize these rituals were not incidental. They were intentional, designed to bind suffering into the structure itself, to ensure that each brick, each beam, carried a weight beyond mere stone. I set the journal down, my hands trembling. For a fleeting moment, the room seems to exhale, the shadows pulling back just slightly. Yet I know this is only a pause. The foundation remembers, the ledger remembers, and now, the journal has opened a new doorway into the past. The candlelight flickers violently as I clutch the journal, the air thickening until it presses against my chest. Shadows coalesce, walls bending subtly, and suddenly I am no longer in the archives. I am in the early 1800s, standing on the frozen, uneven ground where the White House foundations were being laid. The laborers are there. Samuel, Eliza, children too young to bear such weight, faces pale and scarred, hands raw, eyes haunted by the daily terror. They move in rhythm, carrying stones and timber under the cold supervision of overseers whose faces are stern, unyielding, illuminated only by torchlight. Each command echoes in my mind, each shout layered over whispers I still hear today. Chains rattle. The children stumble, their small bodies collapsing under the weight of stone, and the overseers force them upright. The ritual unfolds quietly, methodically. Laborers kneel before certain foundation stones, marking them with blood and ash, uttering prayers scripted by those above. The foundation is consecrated in suffering, and yet their pain is invisible to history, as if erased by divine decree. I step closer, heart hammering. The spectral presence of these lives binds itself to the walls, their memory radiating like heat from the frozen ground. I feel their despair, a tangible pressure against my chest, and I understand. This is why the foundation pulses even now. The building is a vessel for centuries of anguish. The laborers' suffering fused with the stone, alive in a way that defies logic. A voice cuts through the chaos, a whisper that is both Samuel's and mine. Do you see us? Remember, tell them. Shadows twist around me, and I feel fingers brushing my face, my arms, my heart. I stumble backward, and the vision collapses as abruptly as it began. The archives are silent once more, the journal heavy in my hands, the candle flickering weakly. But I am changed. I have seen what was never meant to be seen. And I know the laborers, the erased, the bound, are watching still, waiting for the world above to finally reckon with their existence. The archives are silent, but the atmosphere hums with anticipation. The journal lies open, candlelight trembling across its pages, and suddenly I feel it, a presence brushing against my senses, patient, deliberate. This is no longer a vision. It is interaction. A quill lifts slightly from the desk, floating, suspended as if held by unseen hands. Ink drips onto a blank sheet in looping, agonized letters. Remember us. My pulse races. The air grows colder, thick with the scent of iron and earth. A stack of papers shudders, top sheets flipping rapidly as if the room itself is breathing, alive with memory. I notice the ledger too, vibrating softly. Names appear to shift slightly, ink smudging as if guiding me to focus on specific entries. Samuel's name, etched deeply into stone in the hidden chamber, shines briefly on the page, catching the flicker of candlelight. Tell them, our chains remain. A sudden gust rattles the window panes, though all windows are closed. Shadows stretch unnaturally, flickering and writhing like fingers across the walls. I feel fingertips brush my arms, my neck cold, insistent. Objects tremble around me. A chair rocks, a book falls, its pages splaying open to reveal cryptic symbols echoing the ritual chamber below. I speak aloud, asking what they want. The room responds in chorus, whispers overlapping, layered, urgent. Names, stories, do not let them forget. We built this world, through blood and labor. My flashlight swings, illuminating a fleeting figure at the corner of the room, its eyes hollow, mouth moving silently. The candle flickers violently, then steadies, leaving only the echo of the plea. I realize fully that the spirits are not content with mere observation. They demand acknowledgement, remembrance, interaction. Their memory, once buried and suppressed, now imposes itself on the present, refusing to be ignored. The building above may host celebrations, speeches and history lessons, but beneath it, beneath the veneer, the forgotten continue to assert their existence. The candlelight trembles as shadows stretch unnaturally across the walls of the archive. My heartbeat echoes in the silence, and suddenly the air thickens, almost solid, pressing against my chest. A vision begins to coalesce, flickering like a film reel projected in the corner of the room. I see them, George Washington, Thomas Jefferson, and other early presidents, walking the construction grounds above the hidden chambers. They pace in fine coats, quills tucked in hands, observing laborers below, their faces calm, polished, detached. Orders are given quietly, recorded in ledger entries and letters that outwardly celebrate progress, but whose coded margins describe punishment, ritual, and control. The whispers begin. Layered over the vision, they knew. They erased us. I watch as overseers force the enslaved to kneel, hands raw, while the presidents examine symbols etched into foundation stones. There is reverence in their manner, but it is a reverence rooted in power, dominance, and secrecy. The rituals, the nightly ceremonies, the blood and ash, the forced labor are not incidental. They are deliberate acts to sanctify the building with suffering, to bind the memory of pain into the very walls. A cold gust sweeps through the archive. Candle flames quiver as if breathing, casting fleeting images of hands pressed into stone, faces emerging from the shadows. The ledger's entries and the journal's notes begin to resonate together, vibrating with energy as if the building itself is confirming the vision. I sit alone in the archive, journal open on my lap, the candle flickering against the walls. The air is cold, unnervingly still, yet I feel it pressing in from all directions. Whispers curling around me, shadows stretching unnaturally. My heartbeat thrums like a drum, echoing the pulse I have felt beneath the floors for weeks. The ledger and journal no longer feel like tools of research. They are conduits. Names shift on the pages as if alive. Samuel, Eliza, countless others, all pressing for recognition, their anguish seeping into my mind. I rub my eyes, trying to separate reality from vision, but the candlelight dances too violently, throwing shapes across the walls. Figures appear, vanish, then reappear in impossible spaces. I hear chains dragging slowly, deliberately, always out of sight but always present. Sleep becomes impossible. I dream of the foundations, the laborers' faces pressed into stone, their eyes following me. I wake in cold sweats and the whispers continue, no longer confined to the hidden chambers. They permeate hallways, bookshelves, the very air murmuring, "Do not forget. Do not forget. Do not forget." Even my perception of history warps. I can no longer look at portraits of the founding presidents without seeing them above construction pits, quills in hand, complicit in ritual and terror. Every polished floor, every gilded frame feels tainted. The building is alive, aware, and patient, and I can feel its memory entwining with mine. I begin to speak the names aloud, attempting to anchor myself. Samuel, Eliza, Mary, John. The whispers rise in response, a chorus of relief and accusation, layering over my own voice until the line between past and present blurs completely. I feel chains tighten around my wrists in dreams and faint touches in reality. The foundation's pulse now matches my own heartbeat, relentless, insistent. I am no longer merely an observer. I am a participant in the memory, bound to the story I unearthed. The archive quivers with a pulse that is no longer subtle. Candle flames twist violently, casting the walls into chaotic patterns. The whispers, now insistent and commanding, swirl around me like wind in a tomb. I clutch the journal, my fingers slick with sweat, heart hammering against the weight of centuries-long memory. The spirits grow bold. Shadows detach from walls, rising slowly, circling, pressing in, a tangible force that bends the air. I feel Samuel's presence closest, his hollow eyes drilling into mine. "Let us speak. Let us walk. Let us be seen," he murmurs. I realize the ritual of the foundation, the hidden ceremonies, is not complete. It seeks completion through acknowledgement, through a living vessel. The ledger vibrates beneath my hands. Names writhe across the page, letters elongating, twisting, forming shapes I cannot comprehend but feel in my bones. Chains rattle in the corner, a sound that is no longer distant but intimate, wrapping around my ankles, wrists, my consciousness. I stumble, nearly collapsing, but the spirits hold me upright, urging, demanding, "You must carry us." Through memory, through witness, I close my eyes and the vision overwhelms me. I am transported beneath the East Wing, surrounded by spectral laborers performing the rituals over and over, centuries of repetition condensed into this moment. Flames flicker in impossible corners, casting light over symbols etched in stone. The pulse beneath the floor now matches mine exactly. I feel my heartbeat entwined with the foundation itself, as if my body has become part of the building's memory. A cold pressure grips my chest. Voices layer over my thoughts, murmuring names I cannot bear to forget. I scream, and it becomes both mine and theirs, a collective cry echoing across time. My vision blurs. The spectral hands press against my skin, imprinting centuries of anguish directly onto my senses. The floor beneath me hums with intensity, vibrating through my bones. Shadows coil and stretch along the walls like serpents, flickering in impossible patterns. The pulse is not mine alone. It is the heartbeat of the building itself. The foundation remembers. It is alive, chains rattle from below, echoing like thunder. I step toward the pit in the East Wing chamber, but the floor shifts subtly, responding to my presence, guiding me, warning me. Whispers curl around my ears, insistent and urgent. "Do not leave. Do not ignore. We are here." The walls seem to breathe, expanding slightly, contracting, alive with centuries of suppressed fear. I place my hand on the stone. It is warm, faintly pulsing. And I feel the laborers' pain, their exhaustion, their terror transmitted through centuries into this very structure. The pulse grows stronger, faster, entwining with my heartbeat. The building is no longer inert. It is a vessel, sentient, conscious, and aware of its history. Suddenly, shadows spring from the walls, forming semi-solid figures. Faces I have seen in visions. Samuel, Eliza, countless others press against the stones, their mouths moving in silent, agonized plea. The chains clink and scrape as if dragged by invisible hands. I stumble backward, panic rising, yet I feel drawn toward the center of the chamber, where the pit seems to pulse like a heart, beating in rhythm with the foundation's living memory. I hear fragments of conversation from centuries past, overlapping with the present, the overseer's orders, the president's directives, the whispers of laborers suffering. Every stone, every timber, every carved symbol vibrates with energy, making the building an archive of anguish, a living testimony of erased lives. I realize with a shudder, this is not a haunting in the traditional sense. The White House is alive with memory, conscious of those who built it, aware of those who were erased. The laborers' spirits entwined with its foundations move through it as one, demanding acknowledgement, demanding presence. The East Wing chamber convulses with life or something that feels alive. Shadows twist violently, chains clattering like thunder, and the pulse beneath my feet has grown deafening, resonating directly through my body. The whispers become a roar, overlapping voices, centuries of anguish compressed into a single urgent demand. Remember us. Speak for us. Carry us. I stumble, clutching the journal, but the room moves with me. Walls bend, ceiling shift subtly, shadows stretching into grotesque shapes that brush my skin. I feel spectral fingers curl around my arms, my shoulders, my head, tugging at my consciousness. The spirits press insistently, attempting to inhabit me, not to harm, but to speak through me, to bridge centuries of forgotten labor and ritual. A scream rises from my throat, but it is no longer solely mine. Samuel, Eliza, and the countless erased lives seem to merge with me, layering their voices, their pain, their memories over my own. The ledger vibrates violently, pages turning of their own accord, ink flowing into patterns I cannot fully comprehend. Symbols of chains, of labor, of ritual writhe across the pages like living etchings. I collapse to my knees, pulse pounding, the candlelight flickering as if caught in a storm. My body convulses as if being pulled apart and recombined by unseen hands. The whispers chant in broken, overlapping syllables. Tell them. Remember the foundation. The chains. The sacrifice. For a brief, terrifying moment, I am not myself. I see through their eyes the frozen foundations, the exhausted hands of children, the overseer's cold commands, the ritualistic marking of stone with blood and ash. I feel the building's memory, sentient and aware, integrating me into its narrative, its living archive of suffering. Then, just as suddenly as it began, the pressure lifts. The shadows recede, leaving only the pulse beneath the floor, a faint, insistent heartbeat and the whispering echo. You carry us. Now tell them. I collapse fully, trembling, gasping, a witness forever bound to a history the world refused to see. I stagger out of the East Wing chamber, the archive's polished floors glaringly bright after the darkness below. Every breath feels thick, each heartbeat resonating with the pulse I've carried from the foundation. The candlelight flickers as if reflecting my own unsteady resolve. I am changed, marked not by what I did but by what I saw, and by what saw through me. The whispers have not ceased. They hover at the edge of perception, lingering in corners, behind doors, brushing against my skin like faint fingertips. I hear them in the creak of floorboards, the rattle of chandeliers, even in the soft rustle of pages in the archive. Samuel, Eliza, and countless others insist I remember. They demand I carry their story into the light of the world above, where history has ignored them. The ledger and journal lie before me. Names, symbols, and rituals no longer feel like mere documents. They are conduits, vessels of memory, their power tangible in the trembling air. I trace a finger over Samuel's name and a shiver runs up my arm. The pulse beneath the floors echoes faintly in my chest. The foundation, the building itself, waits, patient, aware, sentient with centuries of erased life. I know I cannot return to normalcy. History has been rewritten too long, sanitized, celebrated without acknowledgement of the laborers who built it. I feel the weight of their chains, the texture of their sweat, the imprint of their anguish etched into stone and timber. Their presence has fused with my own, and the knowledge will not let me rest. I step into the hallway. the bright light of day spilling across walls polished with centuries of false pride. I carry the ledger, the journal, and the memory of every soul beneath the White House. My voice trembles as I whisper their names aloud, and I feel the pulse respond, a faint, grateful resonance. The forgotten are no longer invisible. They are alive in memory, in witness, and I am now bound to be their messenger. The corridors of the White House feel impossibly long, polished floors reflecting the weight of centuries. I move through them, ledger and journal clutched tightly, aware that the pulse beneath the foundation still resonates, faint but alive. I am no longer merely a visitor. I am a witness, a vessel for the forgotten, bound to carry their memory forward. The whispers never fully fade. Even in sunlight, in the public halls where tourists marvel at history, I feel them pressing against my consciousness. Do not forget. Our chains, our labor, our names. Each echo is sharp, insistent, a constant reminder that the past is never truly buried. The White House, symbol of liberty and power, stands atop layers of suffering, ritual, and deliberate erasure. I think of the presidents, the architects of freedom and public virtue, who knew the cost of construction and concealed it. Their legacy is hollowed by omission, their triumph built upon the erasure of Samuel, Eliza, and countless others. The ledger, the journal, the hidden chambers, they are proof that history is never neutral. Memory is alive, insistent, a force beyond any narrative carefully curated for comfort. At night, the pulse beneath the floors grows stronger, a heartbeat that carries the weight of centuries. Shadows coil around me in the corners of my vision, fleeting and deliberate. I hear chains dragging softly, hands brushing the stone, whispers calling names I cannot yet fully remember. And I know that this is no mere haunting. It is a declaration. The forgotten will not be silenced, their presence entwined with the very foundations of power. I step outside into the twilight, the White House looming, majestic yet monstrous in its duality. The wind carries faint whispers, a chorus of lives erased yet remembered through me. I close my eyes and speak their names aloud, one by one, feeling the pulse respond, a quiet, persistent acknowledgement. Cut to wide shot of the White House at dusk, shadows stretching unnaturally along its base, the whispering echo fading but never gone. The forgotten are eternal, and so I will remain, witness to what history would hide, bound forever to memory chains and the foundation itself.